I didn't actually use the word fascist in the book American Fascist lightly. I understand the historical connotations. It conjures up images of brown shirts, and historical parallels are always dangerous. You know, as Robert Paxton writes correctly in his, I think, very thoughtful book on fascism, The Anatomy of Fascism, no two fascist movements are alike. Even Hitler's fascism varied quite significantly from the fascism of Mussolini. But the core elements of the movement, the calls for moral renewal, the belief in apocalyptic violence as a kind of cleansing agent, the dismissing of whole segments of humanity as irredeemable impediments to progress, the power of authority figures to tell you what is right and wrong, the belief in inevitable destiny, all of it is, when you closely examine, replicated in the belief systems of this movement. And I think it's important. I come out of the church. My father was a Presbyterian minister, as you heard, progressive, very involved in the civil rights movement. He was a veteran of World War II, very involved in the anti-war movement. He told me when I was about 12 years old that if the Vietnam War was still being fought when I was 18 and I was drafted, he would go to prison with me. I still, to this day, carry an image of sitting in a jail cell with my dad. He died in 1995, but the latter part of his life was spent fighting in the gay rights movement. His youngest brother, my uncle, was gay, lived with his partner in Greenwich Village, and my father had a particular sensitivity to the pain of being a gay man in America in the 1950s and 60s, so that when I was at college, I went to Colgate University for undergrad. There was no gay and lesbian organization. By then, my dad had a church in Syracuse, and when my father found this out, he brought the gay speakers to my campus. And I would sit around with small groups, sort of trying to build awareness among students for other ways of being and respect for other forms of sexual orientation. And this eventually led to gays and lesbians confiding to my dad that they were uncomfortable coming out of the closet to form an open gay and lesbian alliance. This was a problem he solved by arriving one day for lunch and taking me out to lunch and telling me, although I wasn't gay, that I had to found it. So I founded the Gay and Lesbian Alliance at Colgate. I never actually went, but it had my name, you know, every Lawrence Hall, every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock to see Hedges, Gay and Lesbian. And when I would go into the dining hall, the guy would take my card for breakfast, lunch, or dinner and check it off and hand it back to me and go, faggot. So I made it my undergraduate mission to seduce his girlfriend. That's the tradition that I come out of. It's a real tradition. Well, not that incident, but it's a real tradition. It's the tradition of Dorothy Day. It's the tradition of William Sloane Coffin, who you know, became a great friend and whose loss, I think, has left a hole for all of us in the progressive religious community. It's the tradition of Martin Luther King. It's the tradition of Father Daniel Berrigan, who thankfully is still with us up on the Upper West Side. I think my anger towards the Christian right, in part, comes from that attempt to delegitimize this tradition, because it's real. It may not be a majority. It may not, you know, speak, have a voice within the mainstream, but it is a real tradition. And it has a long and honored place in American society, going all the way back to the abolitionist movement, of which some of my own relatives were involved in. I think the other thing that angered me about the Christian right is the way they egregiously acculturate the Christian message with the worst of American capitalism and American imperialism. Now, I'm not, you know, I spent enough of my life reading the Bible to understand that there are huge sections of both the Christian and the Hebrew Bible that are morally indefensible. The Gospel of John is filled with raw anti-Semitism. You know, Paul, the letters of Paul are misogynist rants filled with homophobia. You know, God blesses acts of righteous genocide in Genesis. All of that is there. It is excised from readings in liberal churches, just as the Christian right loves reading that garbage. And I think that it's important to remember that people who come out of a Christian tradition, no matter what their orientation, are selective literalists, including the Christian right. They pick and choose what serves their ideology and ignore the rest. We did it. You know, the book of Revelation, you know, when Martin Luther printed the first edition of the Bible in the vernacular, he didn't even put the book of Revelation in there. He put it at the back. I mean, the Bible, and you know, we can discuss this perhaps later, was never designed as a book anyway. In Greek, it's called ta biblia, which means little books, and this was all, the Bible was put together as a document in the 3rd and 4th century with a ruthless attempt by an authoritarian institutional church under Constantine to destroy or delegitimize books that didn't bolster the power and authority of the church, as well as, of course, that we know that large sections of it was rewritten, including, by the way, the famous reference to Jesus Christ by the Roman historian Josephus. That was fabricated. There is no documentation that Jesus existed. You know, he is a figure in the same way that Buddha. We don't have any shred of historical evidence that Christ actually existed. So I wrote this book. I did use the word. I thought about it. I actually spent a long time with Fritz Stern. Some of you may know his work. He wrote 5 Germanys I Have Known, and grew up in Nazi Germany, left as a young teenager in the late 1930s, and has spent his entire academic career at Columbia struggling to understand what it was that created fascism. Everything he writes goes all the way back to the late or the 19th century and writes about Bismarck and ideological undercurrents. Very rarely writes about anything after 1933 when Hitler came to power. I spent a lot of time with Stern and with Paxton to essentially have them argue me out of the use of the word fascist. And I think, at least to my own mind, that label, that litmus test that I sought through them, justified the use of the word. And I fear, I mean, these movements need a crisis to come to power. I wrote, I read a column for the Philadelphia Inquirer, which you can see online, but one of Common Dreams just picked it up. But it's on the death of the American left. The failure on the left to stand fast to progressive values, to throw in their lot with a corporatized Democratic Party, to stand by during the Clinton administration when that assault against the American working class that was begun by Reagan was accelerated through NAFTA, throwing 10 million Americans off of welfare rolls. And I think that what we have done, those of us in the left that continue to do that, is essentially squander the integrity and the credibility we have. And I think that the anger on the part of many people in the working class, of which half of my own family has suffered directly from, they're all from former mill towns in Maine. I think that anger towards the liberal elite is justified. I think that the working class was betrayed. Especially now on the cusp of an economic meltdown, what I fear is that betrayal will see that when there is a backlash among those huge tens of millions of people in this country who have essentially been disenfranchised, that backlash will be a right-wing backlash. And I think if you want to see a window into what it's going to look like, look at Lou Dobbs, would be good, or look closely at the message, the right-wing populism of Mike Huckabee. That is a very potent and dangerous movement, and much of my writing and critiques have been on the left, asking them to find a newfound militancy because a right-wing backlash and maybe 1 or 2 more terrorist attacks means we're going to live in a police state. I think we're probably 1 to 2 terrorist attacks away from a police state.